Hi, let's talk about government support and endorsement to the art and cultural industry in Malaysia. This episode will discuss art and cultural industry at large, referring to visual art, performing art, music, filming, literature, design, traditional craft industry, and so on. Let's take a quick recap on the immediate past year budget. In Budget 2022, the Malaysian government allocated 50 million ringgit for the arts and cultural industry, and this is referring to the budget that can be utilized by the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, in short, MOTAC. Besides this, as cited from the official announcement of the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia, quote, agencies such as the Cultural Economy Development Agency, CENDANA, the National Film Development Corporation Malaysia, FINAS, and My Creative Ventures will also receive 188 million ringgit to continue several recovery initiatives, end quote. So, what have been done with the budget? Well, we observe several main approaches here. Number one, giving out grants to encourage creative output. The said grants are usually dispensed to facilitate the artists, the designers, writers, performers, musicians, so on and so forth, and also their related organizations in the production of exhibitions, performances, publications, and programs. In some cases, the grants are also funding their research and the organization's operational costs. Second approach would be the tax deduction for sponsorship. The government actually encourages individuals and corporates to sponsor art, cultural, and heritage activities. Subject to the approval of the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, the sponsored amount can be treated as an expenditure to be deducted from the sponsoring entity's gross income in their tax computing. Pursuant to the proviso to paragraph 34(6)(k) of the Income Tax Act, the amount of deduction in respect of expenditure incurred for sponsoring the said arts, cultural and heritage activities must not in aggregate exceed 1 million ringgit. Number 3, there was also a very much welcome scheme, which is the vouchers given out for art purchase. MOTAC, through the National Art Gallery (NAG), offered vouchers for the public to use in their art purchase. The vouchers of 500 ringgit and 1,000 ringgit, amounting to a maximum of 3,000 per individual, were given based on application and can be used at art galleries which have registered themselves with NAG under the scheme. The art galleries are then reimbursed by NAG after giving the discount to their clients who have used the voucher. In this sense, the art galleries won't suffer loss by giving this discount, while many new and young collectors were actually incentivized to enter the scene of collecting art. This scheme has commenced in 2021 as MOTAC's effort to boost art purchase amidst the pandemic sentiment, and the campaign was brief. The total voucher allocation was rather small, while many interested parties actually missed the boat. 2022, we have seen a huge improvement in this scheme, which was launched early of the year and went on for a couple of months. What about Budget 2023? As announced in October 2022, the government will be allocating 25 million ringgit next year to provide incentives to the people in the form of discounts, vouchers, and rebates for accommodation, tourism packages, handicrafts, and works of art up to 100 ringgit. Besides that, there will also be another 25 million ringgit allocated for programs to popularize arts, culture, and heritage. On the other hand, through Think City, there will also be another 10 million ringgit being used to further transform Kuala Lumpur city centre into a creative and cultural hub. A couple of key observations that I have here are that, well, number one, if this budget aims on helping the nation to partake in supporting art by enabling more people to afford creative products such as handicrafts and works of art, then it should not have set a maximum limit as low as 100 ringgit. Reasons? You can safely say that this limit is not very realistic, looking at the price of artworks by Malaysian artists which are already much more higher than that. A freshly graduated art student's painting may be selling at 500 ringgit, 1000 ringgit, 2000 ringgit or anything above that. And we must also take note of the inflation rate and recognize that the cost for artists and artisans to produce works of art and handicrafts have also increased. To think that there are many artworks out there selling for a low price is simply unrealistic. Hence, for the discount or vouchers or rebates to be attractive enough, 100 ringgit may not do the job. Secondly, we also need to recognize that the art and cultural industry in Malaysia is largely not tourist driven. We need to rethink what we already understand about this industry in Malaysia. Local galleries, performance centers, and bookshops bank their sustainable growth on the regular local customers instead of foreign tourists who may just come to this country once or twice in their lifetime. The same goes to theaters and performance centers and so on. And most of the works of arts and artisanal products are no longer consumed as a souvenir for a tourist. More so if we want to encourage the nation to incorporate art and cultural and heritage activities into their lifestyle. We need to convince them that these are the products which carry our national identity, and a product which is an embodiment of the artist or artisanal's lifelong devotion to this particular type of craft or art. Having said that, let's navigate the current landscape together before we explore what could be done to further improve the industry. Generally speaking, the local art and cultural industry lacks audience, especially paying audience. Sad to say, art and culture have not been seen as part of many people's lifestyle. In short, culture is not quite our culture yet. It's not easy to fill up a theatre even if the ticket is FOC. Now, sometimes we do have a bit of blockbuster shows, but I'll take that as exceptional cases. National Art Gallery also has not been remarkably busy with visitors until a few blockbuster exhibitions in recent years, such as the Opera Omnia, where the high-quality prints of Mona Lisa and The Last Supper were shown. Local literature hardly sells above a few thousand copies. So what causes the problem? Well, perhaps the first identifiable factor is the family influence. Tuition classes and shopping are usually given higher priority when it comes to the choice activities during weekends and school holidays. And of course, the education system and the general perception that science and maths are more important than art, music, literature, and sports. The local audience are also not quite ready to compensate the cultural enterprises such as the artists, the musicians, theatre groups, and so on. To increase the willingness to spend on cultural activities and products, the government may consider giving tax relief on cultural spending, like the tax relief for book purchase, to encourage people to spend on local art, theatre play, local craft, and so on. From another angle, perhaps we could also work on the affordability. If government grants could be designed to subsidize the pricing for more audience or more consumers to afford a theatre play or pre-book X copies of local publications for local schools and libraries, or to include music appreciation and art appreciation in school curriculum, where the cost, for example, to pay for the field trip or to pay for the performance ticket is absorbed by the government agencies, this would directly guarantee an amount of sales or income for cultural enterprises. Besides, most importantly, making such cultural activities and products more accessible and affordable to a bigger group of people. On the other hand, the GLC and the dignitaries and prominent leaders could lead by example as well to show to the public that they are passionate about art and culture. The government-linked companies could take supporting local art industry as their cause of CSR. In the 1990s to 2000s, the GLCs were a very important buying force in local visual art scene, which also boosted the interest among the elites to join the club by collecting local art. Petronas and Maybank also set up their own art gallery, and play a substantial role in adding value to the artists and artworks which have gone through their scrutiny. That means that having artworks being collected by this kind of institutions is considered a great achievement to an artist. Some government agencies also sustain an exceptional visual art collection, for example, Bank Negara, which is considered the Hall of Fame for local artists. This further reinforces the belief in art collecting among those who can afford it. And thanks to institutions as such, the very good art collection can now be enjoyed and appreciated by the mass public at a very low or zero cost. Dignitaries publicly showing affection towards art and culture could be very inspiring to people, because they are also social influencers by nature. So, imagine, what if art and culture become a subject matter of interest of a lot of leaders? What the leaders do will definitely induce curiosity and imitation among the people. What I've mentioned just now are more towards the long-term success of the local art and culture industry. On top of what was already announced in Budget 2023, there are a couple of more bold strategies that the government may consider in order to see a quantum leap in this industry. The first one being the government incentives on tech-driven creative industry. Both of the younger talents and consumers are very much into technologies. However, the production of such art and cultural products involves a very big budget and a more complex talent crew team. Artists and art practitioners will not be able to work alone anymore, while full-stack developers and tech service providers will have to be brought to the table for a more sophisticated and art cultural experience. We hope to see that the government's forward-thinking approach in encouraging the said crossover. If grants could be given for a tech-driven art and cultural research and program, this would be enormously welcome. Next, personal income tax relief on cultural spending. I'm quite sure my fellow counterparts in the art and culture industry would agree with me that more consumers are needed. The conversion rate of the general public into a paying audience is always in the question. While Mota and NAG believed in encouraging buying activities by offering vouchers, the real test will come when the voucher scheme is eventually missing. I strongly believe that the tax relief on cultural spending could be a very sustainable approach to cultivate the habit of enjoying art and cultural activities, and eventually assimilated into everyone's lifestyle, much like how reading is encouraged by tax relief offered for book purchase. To make the policy fair for art practitioners of various backgrounds and sectors, and to take into consideration that people have ranging interests when it comes to different forms of arts, the expenses qualified for the tax relief on cultural spending should include the purchases of local works of art, the local artisanal products, traditional handicrafts, as well as the local designer crafts, tickets to local music performances, theatrical plays, comedy shows, and the like. This policy is more sustainable for the government, as the allocation for tax relief could be offset from the gradual reduction in grant giving and the increase in the tax collection from art practitioners and organizations when they can eventually stand on their own feet and start to make profit. Last but not least, it would be great if government could offer incentives on establishing and running private museums as well. You may have noticed that in recent years, there are many private museums keep mushrooming in Klang Valley. Smaller museums and cultural centers run by interested individuals and community-based organizations are also seen sporadically nationwide. Some even exist in suburban areas. Their subject matters range from batik art to vintage toys, heritage artifacts and storytelling, to name a few, usually quite exotic. More and more art collectors are also building or converting spaces into a public showcase of their collection and curating activities if they have not done so. In view of the outreach to the public in both a bigger geographical area and fields of interest, I think the private museums should be encouraged. As they close the gap, which are unreachable by the public or government museums, they decentralize the enjoyment of art and cultural activities, as well as the public education on some eccentric fields of interest. They should be incentivized with activity-based grants for more activation and tax reduction in their pioneering years. So, I've shared my viewpoints. Some may argue that it's better that the government gets involved lesser in art and cultural industry in order to preserve the freedom of expression and creation. However, we need to recognize that change at the macro level is more possibly achieved using a top-down approach. If the government doesn't make it right at the policy-making level, we, the industry players, will constantly spend excessive amount of time discussing matters of survival rather than improvisation. Thank you for listening. Bye!